Did you know that we often limit God? It's us who puts the limits on Him. And we think it's the other way around. We think, God, why aren't you doing this thing for me? And He's over there saying, you're not letting me. I'm going to reveal to you today in this episode one of the main limiting beliefs people have when it comes to money, when it comes to asking God for things, when it comes to kind of how this all works. All right, this is going to be a pretty powerful episode because I can guarantee you've made this mistake in one way, shape, or the other, because I've made this mistake in many, many ways, shapes, and forms. And I'm going to try my best to keep this one short. But here's what I want you to think about. Maybe I'll make reaction videos. Sometimes what I'll do, I watch a lot of personal development things. I watch entrepreneurs and business and mindset. I watch faith and preaching and teaching. I watch money guys. I watch investing guys. I watch crypto guys. I'm learning, right? And there's an old saying that says, chew the grass, but leave the sticks. You could probably put that together what that means. I'm just gonna dive into it. I don't have an eloquent way to get there. I watch a lot of guys, and what most of them operate from, it's a very natural way of thinking, worldly way of thinking. It is not adding in God's super to your natural. It's just out of their own strength, their own flesh, their own wisdom, their own reasoning, their own understanding. This is how you become successful financially. And what I'm quoting isn't necessarily a non-Christian person. A lot of the strong, forward-facing Christians, teachers and financial people think this way. I personally believe it's very limiting, and I don't think you have to think this way. I was watching a training, and this very respected man, very wealthy man, his net worth something like $85 million. Crushing it financially, young guy too. Very smart, very smart. And he was doing a training for his staff, and he released the training on YouTube. And what he was teaching was how you can buy something now, or you can invest it. You can invest that same amount of money, and in 45 years, it will be worth a whole lot more. So in this example, he was showing how one of his employees they pulled up on the internet a pair of Nike shoes, like Jordans, and they were watching it, and the Jordans were like $100. And he was telling his employee, you could buy the Jordans now, and I think the kid was 23, the employee, and then he went over to an investment calculator, and he was like, or you can put that $100 into a Roth IRA. That gets you at least 6% a year. And by the time you're 65, and he did the math, by the time you're 65, that $100 that you put here would be worth $8,000 over here. Or whatever the number was. It was some number like that. And the kid was like, I'm never buying Jordans again. And the guy teaching it was like, yeah, right. So every time you think about making a purchase for something that you want but don't need, just realize if I invested that money, it's going to produce $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 by the time I'm 65. And everyone on the video was like, oh yeah, wow, oh that's good, yeah. Hey, you don't need the Jordans. Just go to Walmart, get you the Walmart brand, and then invest the difference. And by the time you're 65, you'll be glad you did. Well, look, I get what you're saying. I get it. Now, one, the odds of a person doing that forever, every time they have a want, is not going to happen. But two, when I watched that, I just thought God could do both. You can get the Jordans and invest for your future. See, a lot of teachers, and there's another main financial teacher, you guys know who I'm thinking about, who teaches the same thing. The problem in my personal my personal philosophy is I believe God can do both. But they believe man can only do one. Either it's this or it's that. And I just think that limits God. God could literally just be saying, hey, you didn't ask me for the shoes. Hey, you didn't ask me for the investment money. And I got a friend who they're building a new house, and I'm thrilled for him. And if you're watching this, much love. I'm pumped for you. But what it did is they took their kids out of private school and put them into public school because they thought, well, I'm going to have a new high mortgage, a new monthly payment. So now we can't afford to also do private school with our kids. And I know private school is important to them and it's a big deal. But they have the either or mentality. I need a cool name for this theory. Y'all help me in the comments. I was thinking like the poverty dichotomy, which I don't know, it just sounds cool. Maybe it doesn't quite make sense. But my point is, why does it have to be the house or the school? I can believe God for both. In most of these cases, it's not that you're on purpose leaving God out and saying, no, God, I don't want you involved. A lot of times we just don't think to do it. I've had many conversations with people and I'm like, did you just ask God? And they're like, no, I didn't. It didn't even cross my mind. That's what I'm trying to get on y'all's radar. Man, James, the book of James, what does it say? It just says, you have not because you ask not. Sometimes you just didn't ask. Whole ask, seek, knock scriptures. Man, ask, it'll be given to you. John, in the book of John, I did a whole series on it. Go down in the YouTube channel. They got orange backgrounds on asking God. John 14, 15, and 16. Now there's several others, but just in those three scriptures, those three chapters, it goes in detail on what you can ask God for. Hint, anything. I mean, think about my friend. The private school is a strong Christian, awesome private school. I think God's up there just saying, why didn't you ask me for both? I got you the house that you asked me for. Why did you think you couldn't afford this? Well, when you do the math and do the numbers, well, Proverbs 3:5. Look, it opened right to it. Because I read it so much. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he'll show you which path to take. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Depending on your own understanding, the Amplified says your own understanding, reasoning, or logic. Well, my logic says I can't afford it. Yeah, but don't trust that. Don't depend on that. Is it, let's see, Matthew or Mark? Yeah, Mark 9. Mark 9:23, Jesus says, what do you mean if I can? Go back up a couple scriptures. Jesus heals the demon-possessed boy. He goes up and says, one of the men in the crowd spoke up and said, teacher, I brought my son so you could heal him. He was possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever the spirit seizes him, throws him violently to the ground, foams at his mouth, does some goofy stuff. So I asked your disciples to cast out this evil spirit, but they said they couldn't do it. But they couldn't do it. Jesus said to them, you faithless people. How long do I got to be with you? How long do I got to put up with you? Bring the boy to me. So they brought Jesus the boy. But when the evil spirit saw Jesus, it threw the child into a violent convulsion and he fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked, how long has this been happening? The boy's father said, since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into the fire or into the water trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can. And Jesus goes, what do you mean if I can? Jesus asked, anything is possible if a person believes. I read that wrong. What do you mean if I can? Jesus asked. Then he said, anything is possible if a person believes. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. We got to get out of this either or mentality. I mean, it's really saying I can believe God for this, but I can't believe him for that, which means you just don't believe him, which means you're probably trying to get the one thing in your own strength without his help. Again, you're probably not doing that on purpose. You're not saying, no, God, I don't want you. You just haven't trained yourself or renewed your mind to this way of living. Kingdom mindset. That's all this is. I'm teaching you guys how to operate in the kingdom. And the kingdom says you can have both. The kingdom says you can have whatever you ask for if you believe in your heart and doubt not. I got this concept from watching this is probably 12 years ago. There was a mega pastor here in the United States. And for his birthday, his church congregation bought him a Rolls Royce. And they took up an offering, and they all paid for it. It was a mega church, lots of people. It financially probably wasn't that big of a deal, to be honest with you. But of course, he got a ton of flack, and all the news media went crazy, and everyone's hating on him, and everyone's saying all this stuff. And, I'm watching it, and, people are saying things like, oh man, why did they got to give him a Rolls Royce? Why did they have to give him a luxury car? Couldn't they got him just like a nice Toyota, a nice Nissan, a nice truck or something? And then they could have sent the rest off to missions or off to a third world country or to somebody in need. That's what they should have done. Which is actually really, really silly when you think about it. So when I heard that and I heard their arguments of what they should have done, it just rose up in my spirit. God saying, I could do both. I can get someone a Rolls Royce and we can send $1 million on missions, over to missions. Why do you think I'm short on cash? You think we're running out up here? You see what I'm saying, guys? God can do both. I was telling that story to my friend, and before I could get to my punchline of how I believe God can do both, he chimed in real quick. He was quick to speak and said, yeah, that's what I think too. And I looked at him and I said, and he's a Christian. And I said, what kind of car do you drive? And he goes, Cadillac Escalade, which is like the nicest SUV on the planet. And I go, where do you live? And he told me, and it's the nicest area of Tulsa, and in a mansion. And I go, how far are you going to go with this? Because couldn't you drive just a nice truck? And couldn't you have sold the rest of it? And couldn't you sell your Escalade, drive a nice truck, and give the rest to missions? I was like, it's just you and one other person living in this giant mansion. You could definitely downsize, and you do not need to live in that part of town if you're going by needs. And he looked at me and was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, you're right. I get it. Yep. I get it. We're so need-minded. We're so afraid to ask God for big stuff. We're playing so small. We're playing in the natural. It's this or that. It doesn't have to be that way, guys. God's a big God, I'm telling you. Let's just read like one of these ask scriptures. Let's go to John 15. Jesus says, yeah, I'm the vine. You are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. There's a whole revelation in that right there too, producing much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Which, that's fine, because you're with him. You don't have to worry about that. But if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, that's the condition, right? If you remain in Jesus, and his words remain in you, okay, so you qualify for that. You may ask for anything you want. Listen to the words, the verbiage. You may ask for anything you want, and it will be granted. And then tells you why. Because when you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples, and this brings great glory to my Father. It goes on, and he says it again. That's verse 7 and 8. If you go down to verse 16, it says, you didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit, so that my Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. Whatever you ask. You can do both. You can get the Jordans, and you will be able to retire if that's your goal. You'll be able to have money later also. What we teach inside of Increase University and Kingdom Money Mastery and our paid programs is how to live the increased life. We often say, I'm going to show you how to live big now and how to live big later. Because what's often taught is that dichotomy of you've got to live small now if you want to live big later. And what they teach, the living big later, isn't actually that big. I've often thought about this. They're teaching a lot of things from a worldly, carnal, fleshly perspective. So the reason they teach what they teach is because they're not factoring God into it, nor his promises or principles. It's why they live the decreased life. It's why they're always teaching cut, cut, cut. Live small, live small, live small. What I'm teaching is increase, increase, increase. Live big now and live big later. The same God that supplies you now will supply for you later. And yeah, there's stuff we need to do. There's actions we need to take, and we're going to take them. We're going to apply these principles. Because I like nice shoes. I like cool shoes. I like big houses. I like luxury cars. So I'm going to get them now, and I'm going to do things that will also produce fruit for me in the future. I can do both. You can do both. You can have both. There's no limits. Well, actually there is. The scripture I read to you in Mark 9:23, anything is possible to him who believes. Some other translations put it, so be it according to your faith. So if your faith is, I can only have one or the other, then that's what it will be, according to your faith. So be it according to your faith. That's how it goes. So my faith says I can have both. I would like your faith to say you can have both as well. That way, you can get the nice house and still put your kids in private school. That way, you can get the shoes you want and still invest in the future. Now, here is a practical way you can do this. So to prove my point, so to speak, one of the things I was doing for a long time is anytime I would go and spend something like at Quick Trip, or like it's a really nice gas station we have here, at Quick Trip, and I'd get a energy drink, or I'd get whatever, I would take that same amount of money and move it over to my investing account. So if I spent $10 over here, I would move $10 to my investment account also. So that's one practical thing you could do. If you feel moved to, consider it. So if you're like, hey, I want to buy the $100 shoes, okay, cool, but I also need to move another $100 to my investment account, because I can do both, and God can supply me for both. I'm telling you, this way of thinking, it's a powerful way. It's a fun way. I believe that everything we put our hand to prospers. I believe that God is a God of abundance. I believe all the promises in Deuteronomy 28. I believe those things. And let me make sure I hit all my notes here before we wrap up, because you guys know I can just preach and preach and preach. So, yeah, I hit them all. I just want you to think about the financial teaching and coaching that you're getting or going through. I want you to think about, I want you to challenge your current thoughts and beliefs on money and how it works, how budgets work, why they do or don't work in your life. And I want you to see if this belief that we've talked about today is at the core of it. You believe you can get one thing but not the other. That if I purchase what I want now, it will hurt me later. That's the main thing I'm trying to get across. If I buy the thing I want now, that means I won't have it later. And that's how aggressive people are teaching this. If you buy the Mercedes now, you're basically screwing yourself over because you're not going to be able to retire one day. If you go to Starbucks every day, you know me, if you want to go to Starbucks every day, go to Starbucks every day and believe God for the increase. But that's the key. You have to believe God for the increase. You got to say, God, I like going to Starbucks every single week. I need more money. Is there a strategy here I need to implement? And you might say, yeah, just start that business you've been thinking on. Then you'll have plenty of money for Starbucks. Oh, cool. But instead, we instantly go to, oh man, we don't need Starbucks. Way overpriced. Corporate greed. We don't need to do that. Like, man, if you just saved that $5 a day and invested it, oh my goodness, by the time you're 65. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. We're teaching all this stuff in the natural and the worldly way of saving money and not how it has to be and all these things. But in the world's way, also, the average lifespan, I think, is like 77 or 78. So you retire at 65 and you've got 13 years to live. You're going to live big, live free for the last 13 years of your life? No. I'm here to tell you it's not going to happen like that, guys. What's probably going to happen if you do this is you've lived with scared money your whole life. If you follow these plans that these people are teaching you, you live scared, afraid to spend, hold on everything, save every penny, invest every penny. And then what's going to happen is when you retire at 65, because you've lived this decrease, lack, scarcity, don't spend mindset, you think at age 65 you're going to be able to flip the switch and all of a sudden you're just living big, living large, living the life? Nope. That same mentality, I've heard it from, I'm not going to say his name, but the big money guy himself. He says after living with a decreased mindset for so long, it's very hard to switch the abundance mindset back on. I heard him say that with my own ears. I'm telling you to start with the abundance mindset. If you just start with the increased mindset, you can carry it on now and in retirement or your later years. We don't have to fear retiring. I'm a huge believer in investing. You guys know that. I have a whole other YouTube channel on investing. Link below if you haven't checked it out. But I'm saying we can live big now and later. It's not one or the other. Ask God. Believe Him for both. So be it as unto your faith. It doesn't have to be one or the other. That's a limit and lid you put on there. You heard somebody else say that and you just said, yep, that sounds good. That sounds right. He's right. If I get this, oh man, I won't be able to retire one day. Oh, because how far are you going to go with that line, right? It's like, well, you don't need a house. You could live in an apartment and then you could invest the difference. So go ahead and sell your house. And then it's like, well, you don't actually need a car. You could ride a bike. You could move in an apartment closer to your job and then ride a bike. And then it's like, well, you don't actually need a bike. You could just walk. And then it's like, well, I mean, you could just keep cutting it. It's silly. It's ridiculous. It's like, where's the line? You just go on forever. You don't need nice clothes. You can make your own clothes. You don't need, and then next, what are we doing here, people? It's ridiculous. Okay? Believe God for big stuff. He's a big God. He loves you. He delights in the prosperity of His people. Yeah, you know what I teach inside of the programs? We teach the 10-10-10-70 rule. We teach tithe the first 10% of your money that we put into storage accounts, our second 10%. We invest our third 10%, and we live and give off the other 70. I mean, we teach these things. But man, we believe God for increase, not to decrease. It takes just as much faith to increase your way out of debt as it does to decrease your way out of debt. You might as well pick increase. That's what the Lord spoke to me years and years ago that kind of kicked off this whole thing. And it's been a great way to live. I'm having a lot of fun. I want you to have it too. If you need more help with this, I got some links in the description below where you can look at joining some of our premium programs. So I'm going to lay this stuff out for you step by step, line upon line, precept upon precept, and show you how to activate God's promise in your life and escape the budgeted life. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one.